I'm gonna beat you into the living death.
Welcome back to Yelling About Mixed Martial Arts, the show where I yell about mixed martial arts. You may have had your heart broken last Saturday when UFC 308 was held in Abu Dhabi. If your heart was not broken, you probably have a well-maintained, mustacheless beard and have never felt the warm caress of a pork chop. Yes, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times in the United Arab Emirates, as Ilia Topuria furthered his fledgling legacy of greatness by knocking out Max Holloway, and Khamzat Chimaev stuck it to his own immune system by staying healthy long enough to dislocate Robert Whittaker's jaw. While both of those fights finished inside of the distance, the same could not be said for a good number of fights before it on the card, where God help you if you didn't come from a country or background that's culturally similar to the UAE. Good lord, the biased judging was so comical that it felt like they were memeing about halfway through the card. It's not a stretch in the slightest to say that the judging staff at UFC 308 would have fucking acquitted Diddy if his real name was Sean Combs Ahmedov. Of the 13 fights on the card, nearly half went to decision. Of the 6 that went to decision, the only person with a cultural similarity to the region who didn't win his fight was Miktabek Arobai, and even that was a split decision. Thankfully, that scrap with Mateusz Rambecki was a fight of the night banger, which deserved to be called close. And of course, Miktabek is also from the Paleolithic era, long before the age of man, where woolly mammoths are still hunted, so it's very unlikely that the pterodactyl flying the news of his defeat back to his tribe has completed its journey home yet. Speaking of otherworldly creatures, this goblin emerged from the bridge that he lives under to once again put on a baffling display of fighting/interpretive dance that somehow led to the first double-spinning backfist knockout in the history of the UFC. Sharaputin put his opponent into the dirt by following the old adage, if at first you don't succeed, the second backhand will do the trick. Sadly for John Jones's wife, he also follows that adage, however I don't think he generally shows up to deliver his abuse as appropriately dressed for the occasion. There were also a pair of unfortunate injuries at UFC 308, when Rafael dos Anjos injured his knee by standing while elderly, and Chris Barnett sprained his ankle by jumping while fat. That's the entire joke. RDA is old and should retire, and Chris Barnett is fat and shouldn't jump high. As an old fat guy myself, I'm allowed to make these jokes, unlike my podcast co-host, Chase Parton.
He was beating him down. There was no chance that Chris Barnett was going to win this fight. He's actually thankful he got injured. I give him credit for fighting through it because, man, it looked like it hurt. I was even saying, like, dude, think about what his ankles go through on a daily basis. This is crazy to me that this dude was in this fight.
Shame on you, Chase. Who you can watch right here on the channel on the Last Week's Fights podcast, live on Monday nights. Check Twitter and Instagram for start times at YAMMA Show. As far as the co-main and main events of UFC 308 go, I want to talk about the concept of needle moving in the sport of mixed martial arts. Prior to UFC 308, I'd say that while obviously impressive, I didn't think that Ilia had been tested in the ways that a champion needs to be tested in order to be considered dominant in his division. I stand by that, considering his most notable wins up until that point were over obviously skilled but not truly elite fighters like Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett. Of course, he'd also beaten the featherweight GOAT Alexander Volkanovski, who'd unfortunately just become significantly less goated, having his head kicked clean off of his shoulders only 4 months prior. However, and regardless of the higher weight, the version of Max Holloway that we saw in the BMF fight was the most evolved, final form of Max in my opinion. The Max that won the first 2 rounds of the fight with Ilia was that guy as well. So for Ilia to take his time, find his rhythm, and be the first person to knock out the legend that is Max Holloway, consider the goddamn needle goddamn moved. It might not have worked out with Machida, but Joe Rogan wouldn't be wrong this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the
Topuria
era.
In the co-main event, another legend would get his jaw fucked up in an entirely different manner, as Bobby Knuckles would fall to the inevitable Khamzat takedown, followed by the crushing of Khamzat's forearm early in the first round of the fight. After all of those months of training specifically for Khamzat, and Rob asking for that fight after having to bulldoze Ikram Aliskerov when their original fight fell through, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel let down by the future Hall of Famer. Khamzat did exactly what you knew he was going to do, and all of the King's horses and all of the King's men could not stop that fate. While I don't think that the performance itself was something I'd consider needle-moving due to that predictability, the fact that it may have slingshotted Chimaev directly to a title shot with Dricus du Plessis is needle-moving in and of itself. So that's 2 needles moved in the right direction. And as much as it pains me to see those needles go scraping over my favorite fighter in Max, and another one I respect immensely in Rob, that's how the game goes, and I still love to see it, nevertheless. Unlike the Magomed Ankalaev performance in the fight before the co-main, which couldn't move a needle if it graduated from Johns Hopkins University. You think that bullshit is gonna fly against Alex Pereira, Maggie? Jesus Christ, I should kick my own ass for ever doubting Khalil's competitiveness. You may have been and still are the next rightful challenger to go up against Poatan, but that 308 performance Alex Pereira beats while drinking his morning coffee. Good luck with that okay-ass power striking. Good luck with that offensive/defensive at the same time wrestle fucking that you've tricked people into thinking gives you some kind of competitive advantage on the ground. And good motherfucking luck with that chin of yours, because 2 hands made out of stone are going to be gunning for it, and nothing that was on display at UFC 308 will be moving any needles in your direction, except perhaps in the post-fight hospital visit when you wake up. Good night and good luck indeed. In other much dumber news, apparently Nate Diaz has rubbed his last 2 brain cells together in order to continue his long-standing beef with fellow dunce cap Brendan Schaub. For a channel that intersects comedy and MMA, you may have wondered why I've never covered Schaub around here before, and that's of course because Brendan Schaub represents neither of those things. To keep it short and to the point, Schaub and Diaz have a feud going back to before the Maymack fight over some comment Schaub made or something, whatever, it's fucking stupid, I promise you. So fast forward to last week when Schaub cried some man tears over Shane Carwin having CTE, even though they're not actually friends anymore apparently. Nate Diaz called Schaub a bitch for crying, and Brendan put out a video telling Nate that if he wants his own CTE-riddled brain to go back into the spin cycle, he can pull the fuck up. And to play jackass's advocate over here, after all the buffoonish tomfoolery and mush-mouth podcasting and Joe Rogan nut gargling, I liked seeing this well-needed reminder from Brendan Schaub. A reminder that Schaub can still conceivably kick the asses of all the hatin'-ass bitches who perpetually mock him everywhere that he turns up. You see, I am well aware of what a complete punching bag Schaub is in the comedy world, and what his later MMA career was like, but let's not get shit twisted. Schaub is still the dude who knocked out Mirko Krokop. This is a dude who finished every one of his fights on The Ultimate Fighter in the first round. This is a man who wrecked a whole-ass pickup truck.
Starting emergency call to the SOS service provided by the manufacturer.
That being said, Nate'll snatch your neck and pop your head off like a champagne cork, Brendan. What the fuck are we talking about, bro? You ordered your black belt via landline, my guy. Stop it. Finally, in news from other sports, the Miami Heat have unveiled a statue of Dwayne Wade to celebrate the many achievements of that legendary player. Unfortunately, it looks like they went to the same artist who did the statue of George St. Pierre.
You can't keep getting away with it!
At least now the ghost of GSP will have a friend in the afterlife, likely watching basketball tumble through the same bowels of hell into which MMA is forever descending. For yelling about mixed martial arts, this is Thinker St. James reminding you that if you care this much about MMA, you too are a fucking moron. Anytime that they have to show the scorecards as a graphic on screen on a UFC broadcast, you know that shit was a robbery. 30-27. Hadi Mohad Ali. Huh. Wonder who Hadi Mohammed Ali is going to be siding with for the majority of this evening. You got Mike Bell, who's a known referee. David Lethaby, I also know the name. He's a little bit less of a regular, but, you know, he's a guy that I have seen before. But Hadi Mohammed Ali. Bro, you can't make this shit up. That's so bad. That's so fucking bad. Steve Johnson, Mike Smith, and Hadi Muhammad Ali. Like, that's like some shit you'd see in a movie.
Game.